as it is already known that fighting has erupted in Sudan's capital city Khartoum and across the country since last month as powerful rival military factions battle for control of the African nation and its future. The sudden slide into violence between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary group RSF stranded thousands of foreigners, including diplomats and aid workers in the country, with the UK, US, France, Germany, Italy, Greece, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the Gulf states among those closing embassies and racing to evacuate their nationals. More than 450 people have been killed in the conflict, and another 4,000 wounded so far. According to the World Health Organization, the Sudanese military and the RSF said Sunday, 30 May, that they had agreed on another 3-day cease-fire, but Khartoum residents said airstrikes, gunfire, and explosions have continued to rock the capital from 9 May. Outside Khartoum, there have also been clashes in Sudan's Darfur region, where human rights groups say Arab militias affiliated with the RSF have targeted camps for internally displaced people, warehouses, markets, and homes. The violence has been most intense in West Darfur, forcing thousands of people to flee the regional capital of El Geneina, with many crossing into neighboring Chad, according to the UN. The violence has splintered the region along ethnic lines, pitting heavily armed Arab militias against communities that identify as African, rights officials said. Sudan sits at the crossroads between the Middle East and Sub-Saharan Africa. Countries including Russia, the United Arab Emirates, and Turkey have eyed Sudan's Red Sea coasts for ports and naval bases that would give them access to one of the world's busiest shipping lanes. As a result of this strategic and economic importance, Sudan has attracted willing international partners. Sudan's northern neighbor, Egypt, wants Khartoum's support to stop a dam being built further south on the Nile River. Cairo fears the dam will choke off fresh water for some 100 million Egyptians and cripple its agriculture industry. The UAE and Saudi Arabia have invested billions of dollars in Sudan, including buying up farmlands irrigated by the Nile. The US is worried about Russia's influence in Sudan, including lucrative gold mining carried out by companies controlled by Yevgeny Prigozhin, an ally of Russian President Vladimir Putin. British families caught up in the fighting had initially accused the UK government of abandoning them, despite reassurances from Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and the Foreign Office that talks were underway to bring them home. After the truce was agreed between the two factions, the UK was able to airlift 536 citizens to safety, with Foreign Secretary James cleverly now urging British nationals who may be hesitant or weighing up their options to make their way to Wadi Sedna, where there are planes and capacity in place to get people out. Alicia Kearns, chair of the Commons Foreign Affairs Committee, told BBC Radio 4's program that the number of British people hoping to be evacuated could total 4,000 plus, adding that those on the ground were living in abject fear, had little food and water left, and even been reduced to killing their pets in some cases because they're worried they're going to starve. Western powers, including the US and the UK, had swung behind a transition towards democratic elections following Bashir's overthrow. They suspended financial support following the coup, then backed the plan for a new transition and a civilian government. Energy, rich powers, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates have also sought to shape events in Sudan, seeing the transition away from Bashir's rule as a way to roll back Islamist influence and bolster stability in the region. Gulf states have pursued investments in sectors, including agriculture, where Sudan holds vast potential, and ports on Sudan's Red Sea coast. Russia has been seeking to build a naval base on the Red Sea, while several UA companies have been signing up to invest, with one UA consortium inking a preliminary deal to build and operate a port in another UA-based airline agreeing with a Sudanese partner to create a new low-cost carrier. Based in Khartoum, Burhan and Hamedi both developed close ties to Saudi Arabia after sending troops to participate in the Saudi-led operation in Yemen. Hamedi has struck up relations with other foreign powers, including the UHA and Russia. Egypt, itself, ruled by military man President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who overthrew his Islamist predecessor, has deep ties to Burhan and the army and recently promoted a parallel track of political negotiations through parties with stronger links to the army and to Bashir's former government. International parties have called for a ceasefire and a return to dialogue, but there has been little sign of compromise from the warring factions. The army has branded the RSF as a rebel force and demanded its dissolution, while Hemedti has called Burhan a criminal and blamed him for visiting destruction on the country. Though Sudan's army has superior resources, including air power, and the RSF expanded into a force estimated at 100,000 men that had deployed across Khartoum and its neighboring cities, as well as in other regions, raising the specter of protracted conflict on top of a long-running economic crisis and existing large-scale humanitarian needs. The ERSF can also draw on the support and tribal ties in the western region of Darfur, where it emerged from the militias that fought alongside government forces to crush rebels in a brutal war that escalated after 2003. People fleeing Khartoum are finding respite in Port Sudan. Whether they choose to ultimately leave Sudan or stay, many who fled from the capital to Port Sudan have been queuing for nearly a week to get onto boats, mainly headed for Saudi Arabia. While the people of Sudan have the most to lose should the current fighting descend into civil war, the geopolitical significance of the country means millions in the surrounding regions, and indeed around the world, also stand to be impacted.